Free will is the capacity or ability to choose between different possible courses of action. The concept of free will has been debated among philosophers for thousands of years. In Book 3 of the Nicomachean Ethics, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle says, "Unlike non-rational agents, we have the power to do or not to do, and much of what we do is voluntary, such that its origin is in us, and we are aware of the particular circumstances of the action." While philosophers like Aristotle believe that humans are free-willed agents, capable of rational decisions, other philosophers over the centuries denied the existence of free will, or at least believe in a limited version of it. This view is typically known as determinism, which is the philosophical idea that all events in the universe are caused by preceding events or natural laws, and are therefore inevitable. It's often contrasted with free will. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus believed in an early version of determinism, and has stated in his writings that all things occur according to fate. When it comes to understanding and investigating the existence of free will, one can find potential evidence in the story of Adam and Eve, found in the book of Genesis. The beginning of Scripture is one of the earliest and most clear examples of free will within the Bible. In the book of Genesis, God gives Adam and Eve the freedom to choose whether to obey or disobey his command. Their choice to eat the fruit is a quintessential example of free will. Their course of action led to the fall of humanity. Although this seems to be the clearest example of free will within the Bible, many Christians would argue that this is simply a misunderstanding and that free will is non-existent. In the beginning of the 16th century, a man by the name of John Calvin started a Protestant theological system known as Calvinism. Calvinism teaches that people do not have free will, in the sense that God had preordained every aspect of life, including how people think and act. Calvinists believe that God's choices are actually the choices made for people, and that people have no ability to change what has been predestined. This means that God is the author of every moral good and every evil action a human has ever committed since the beginning of time. Many famous Calvinists are incredibly harsh towards the concept of free will, going as far as calling it heresy and blasphemy towards God. Calvinist Charles Spurgeon once said, "Free will is nonsense." He is also quoted saying, "Free will I have often heard of, but I have never seen it. I have always met with will, and plenty of it, but it has either been led captive by sin or held in the blessed bonds of grace." Calvinist W.E. Best states in his book Free Grace versus Free Will that the heresy of free will dethrones God and enthrones man. The ideas of free grace and free will are diametrically opposed. All who are strict advocates of free will are strangers to the grace of the sovereign God. Although many Christians today deny the existence of free will and believe in the deterministic views of the Calvinists as gospel, this was not the view held by the early church and the early church fathers. If you've listened to and read nothing but the doctrine of the Calvinistic theologians and various pastors who deny any sort of free wills or agents distinct from God, then it may seem strange to hear that nearly all of the early church fathers believed and emphasized the importance of free will and its power. Clement of Rome was an early church father who lived and ministered close to the time of the apostolic era, near the end of the 1st century. Clement of Rome is actually mentioned in the book of Philippians as a fellow worker of the apostle Paul. The book of Philippians chapter 4 verse 3. "And I entreat thee also, true yokefellow, help those women which labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and with other my fellow laborers, whose names are in the book of life." In Clement's writings known as Recognitions, he states the following on the existence of free will. "For no other reason does God punish the sinner, either in the present or future world, except because he knows that the sinner was able to conquer, but neglected to gain the victory." Saint Ignatius of Antioch is considered an apostolic father and one of the earliest authoritative groups of church fathers. He was a bishop in the early Christian church and a disciple of the apostle John. In his writings known as the Epistle of Ignatius to the Magnesians, he says the following on the concept of free will. "If anyone is truly religious, he is a man of God. But if he is irreligious, he is a man of the devil, made such not by nature, but by his own choice. And there is set before us life upon observance of God's precepts, but death is the result of disobedience, and every one according to the choice he makes shall go to his own place. Let us flee from death and make the choice of life." Justin Martyr is one of the great early Christian apologists and a church father. On the topic of free will, he had much to say on the matter in his dialogue with anti-Christian opponents. In his dialogue known as Dialogue with Trifle, he states the following: "For God, wishing both angels and men, who were endowed with free will, and at their own disposal to do whatever he had strengthened each to do, made them so, that if they choose the things acceptable to himself, he would keep them free from death and from punishment, but that if they did evil, he would punish each as he sees fit." Athenagoras of Athens was an early church father and a Christian apologist who lived during the second half of the 2nd century. In his writings known as A Plea for the Christians, he wrote the following on the free will of both humans and angels: "Just as with men, who have freedom of choice as to both virtue and vice, so it is among the angels. Some free agents, you will observe, such as they were created by God, continued in those things for which God had made, and over which he had ordained them. But some outraged both the constitution of their nature and the government entrusted to them." Saint Clement of Alexandria was a church father from the 2nd century. In his writings known as the Miscellanies, he states that free will is a gift from God himself, and that the power of choosing life is in our hands. "We have heard from the scriptures that self-determining choices and refusal have been given by the Lord to men. Therefore, we rest in the infallible criterion of faith, manifesting a willing spirit, since we have chosen life. To obey or not to obey is in our power, provided we do not have the excuse of ignorance." Methodius of Olympus was an early Christian bishop, ecclesiastical author, and an early church father. In his writings known as the Banquet of the 10 Virgins Discourse, he states that those who deny the existence of free will are guilty of having a lack of respect and reverence for God. Those pagans who decided that man does not have free will, but say that he is governed by the unavoidable necessities of fate, are guilty of impiety towards God himself, making him out to be the cause and author of human evils. One thing to note about these early church fathers is that many of them were in direct contact with the apostles, such as Saint Clement of Rome and Saint Ignatius. What does that say if students of the apostles believed in the importance of genuine free will? The belief in free will has been passed down from Jesus to the apostles, and from the apostles to the early church fathers. Despite the fact that several modern proponents of Calvinism claim that their system of theological determinism constitutes true orthodoxy, for the early Christians and church fathers, such deterministic notions were not only not a part of the early Christian belief, but were typically held by pagans who were set against Christianity. Aside from the early church's views and the Bible's confirmation on the existence of free will, God tells us that we can judge ideas and beliefs based on the fruits that it produces. One study on free will showed that weakening an individual's belief in free will led to a decrease in self-control and willpower, while those who believe that they are free-willed agents and have the power of choice are more likely to have better self-control. These individuals are more likely to overcome struggles and addictions. Another study found that disbelief in free will can also lead to an increase in aggression and reduction in helpfulness towards others. Another negative aspect of weakening your belief in free will shows that it leads to more dishonesty and cheating. This is because those who do not believe in free will feel that they are not responsible for the immoral actions that they commit, and that it is all just the necessities of fate. These are just a few examples of how not believing in free will can negatively influence and impact the behaviors of people. There are definitely some real practical benefits to holding a belief in free will. If you believe you have no real control over your circumstances or the choices you make, then there's nothing motivating you to try to do something positive, since your belief in the power of choice is non-existent. Free will is one of the greatest gifts ever given to humans by God. The power of choice and the responsibility we are given as rational beings is necessary for genuine love to exist, for God and for others. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video was very fruitful. I hope this helped you understand the concept of free will and its existence in the Bible. This is a second video of my series on the early church's views on various topics. If you enjoyed this and would like to support the channel, I do have a Patreon. The link for that is going to be in the bio below. Patreon is also where I post various writings of early church fathers and other topics. But thanks again so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like the video, share, and comment your honest thoughts and insight. Thank you so much. Till next time.